everyone, it's your boy Matt here, coming to you from the Gungahlin Town Centre. Canberra's an interesting place from an urban design perspective. It's a lovely place to live, it's very livable. People who come here from overseas and they're used to big magnificent cities such as New York or Paris, they might be a little bit disappointed at how this city isn't particularly grandiose. It's designed around these little communal hubs, and it's designed to be a very livable place. So it's kind of in a way like the opposite of places like Paris or New York, where it's a wonderful place to visit, but you might not want to live there. Here, it's kind of boring, apart from our national monuments, and those are always exciting. Even by international standards though, as an Australian, when I first came here, I got warm and fuzzies when I was around the monuments and stuff. People coming here from overseas, they'll just be like, meh, right? You know, dude, I've seen the Eiffel Tower. I've seen these very impressive national monuments, such as the Kremlin in Russia. Compared to that, we don't have the same standard of national monument. To us, they're special though. And Canberra, as our national capital, it's a quite livable city. So, segueing from talking about boring and effective, because I want to talk about military cultures. Despite everything I say about the military, if I ever have kids, I'd probably train them such that at one point they'd have the option of attending the Naval College. I'm not a big fan of the Army. I think their culture is a bit different. There's a phrase which is used by Navy people to describe Army. They're like mangoes, okay? They're mangoes. They're green on the outside, they're yellow on the inside, and all too often they'll give you the shits. And that's definitely been my experience with a large amount of Army. But the Army guys, they say something about Navy, which is also true. Because the Army of the three services is the most collective, it's basically the ideology of military people is very strange, because they're in a lot of ways they're communists. You know, if you have a packet of lollies and you're not sharing it, they're like, what the fuck, bro? You got some, you're not giving some to us. And the Army is the most communist of the services. So they'll yet they'll be all passionate conservatives, almost all of them. They get spooked if they see a guy wearing a dress. To them, that's terrifying for some reason, quite often. But they will say, one of the things I do like about Army people is that if you're a sergeant, there's a mess line, you make sure that your troops eat first and you eat last. Navy, it's more hierarchical. There's still that continuation of the back in the 1500s or 1800s, where Britannica ruled the waves, because it's a continuation of the British Navy, really. There is still that kind of upper deck and lower deck thing to an extent. So if you're an officer in the Navy, you do get treated better. There's the wardroom is a much higher level of service, and there's still there's a hierarchy there, and it is a little bit more, I don't know, how would you say it? Gentlemanly, I guess. Both services still have this continuation of the strange back in the day, olden day things. They always take a very long time to develop. Navy is probably still a much more livable service. They do military things, but they tend to be a little bit more sensible about it. Army, a lot of their culture is kind of retarded, if I'm honest. But returning to what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to talk about this collectivist aspect of the military. So there's a model called the Globe model. It was originally developed when IBM started studying different cultures, because IBM, the computer company, they were interested in they were a multinational company. They were working with all these different groups of people, and they needed to understand how these different groups of people were behaving so they could do business with them. And Another thing is that IBM, one of their first things they did was statistics work. So they used to do demographic work and censuses and things like that nature. The information which was used by the Nazis to round up Jews was actually purchased from IBM. That's how they found it. So, corporate America, they actually had quite a lot to do with the Holocaust. Old mate Mr. Ford, who created the Ford automobile. He was a Nazi. IBM gave the data for the Germans to round up the Jews. The more you know. But one of the things that that IBM realized is that a big difference between cultures is that some have this tendency to be collectivist and individualist. An individualist country will they see a person as having rights, that individual has the rights, and that person, it's about that individual's needs. And social norms facilitate people thinking about themselves and doing things for themselves. Collectivist cultures are different. The idea is that there's more of an emphasis on getting that person to conform to a set of social norms. Now, the army is hella collectivist, man. And if you want to see what a collectivist leader looks like, I want you to look at a podcast which was actually released by the army, which showcases sort of the best sides of it, the best sides of this collectivist culture. The episode is called Targeting the Future, the Army's Newest Brigade. There's a gentleman there called Brigadier Nick Wilson. And every indication I have is that Brigadier Wilson is, a fairly decent bloke. But what you'll notice in that video is, first of all, the amount of army buzzwords and technical jargon that they use, because, that's a big part of the military is acronyms and speaking in a way that no one can fucking understand what you're saying. And the other side of it is there's this emphasis on giving credit to everyone and everything being an achievement by the group. The reason why the army likes producing people like that isn't just because they sound nice and they can be good to get along with in a way. The reason why is because when you get people thinking this collectivist way, it means that the people up the top who have authority get people who are more compliant and do what they want. They're going to behave within the agendas set by the people at the top, and those people at the top will say that the people down the bottom are fulfilling the institution's agenda. Often what happens is that people get to the top because they're good at playing politics, and that's your job when you're a leader. You're a politician. Sorry to break it to the crusty sergeants down the bottom, but if you're dealing with different institutions, such as government ministers and other people in that higher echelon, your job is to play politics. So being angry at senior military leaders for being politicians just doesn't make any fucking sense. That is literally their job, okay? Sorry to say it to the crusty sergeants down the bottom, that is their fucking job. And what will happen is that these people at the top, they then have this wonderful system where people are all giving the credit to everyone else and never taking and often not taking agency over what they're doing and their own achievements, and taking what they want from the army, I guess. And that's fantastic, because then you've got these people who you can delegate to do whatever you fucking want, right? And what will happen is that I've met these NCOs, and some of the best people I've ever met have been NCOs. Truly, there's an emphasis on community development in the military. There's always this emphasis on mentoring young people, getting the best out of them, and giving them a good education. And that's one of the reasons why, if I ever have kids, I'm actually quite happy with them going to the military. Probably Navy's my preference, but if they go to Army, I'll tolerate it. Now, getting back to the thing is that what they often try to produce in Army are these incredibly compliant people. These really, I don't know, it's difficult to describe, I'm struggling to come up with the words for it. I think drony is the best way to put it. And they kind of get stuck in these social narratives. That's the best way to put it. Like there's this big narrative like, oh, don't make sure you don't get promoted past your post, because when you do that, it means that you're going to you're going to cause problems for everyone else. It's like, yeah, fantastic, that's a good idea, but people will cite these things like mantras, and you kind of get assessed on as your ability to be part of the group and how good of a person you are by how well you recite these mantras, and if you are kind of sort of displaying that you're conforming to these mantras. So, I don't want to be promoted past my post. That's something people say. They also say things like, that these higher leaders, they're all politicians and shit like that. And it's just a mantra, man. It's just a thing. And it's kind of odd behavior, if I'm honest, but it's something which is a cultural practice in the military, particularly in the army. The army is the worst for it, man. I think it's because of the scale that they do things at, because an army brigade might have 1,000 or 2,000 people in it, and you've got all these people who, but if you're going to scale people to coordinate at that amount of people, it makes sense that they're more collectivist. Like you're on a ship, there's 150 of you, and you guys just, you get along, but even though that people are more tightly confined and stuck together, there does seem to be a bit more individualism in the Navy than there is in the Army, and I find that very strange. I wouldn't have expected to see that, but that's kind of something I've noticed. This is the sort of thing where it would be possible to administer some kind of test, like a questionnaire, to try and measure collectivism and compare it between the different services. I think the instruments that we traditionally use to do that might not be very sensitive. By sensitive, I don't mean like, it doesn't cry very much because its dad didn't hug the survey when it was a kid. That's not what sensitivity means in a survey. What it means is that the questions aren't able to pick up variance. Okay. I suspect what would happen is that the Air Force would be the most individualistic, and the instrument wouldn't be able to pick up much difference between Navy and Army, because the way that these measurements measure that variance is designed to measure differences amongst the general public or between large cultures and not very similar cultures. But it is something I've noticed, is this mantra thing. And of course it's in all the services. And it's been my great frustration. So I've done all this incredible, like when myself as a civilian have had to work with around military people. Like I created this amazing taco project. I did this incredible work on AI, and all these people who contributed very minor things to it will look at it and they'll be like, hey, I own a part of this. Like this is my thing. And it's like, first of all, within the taco side of the project, some guys in signals who I was chilling with and who enslaved me, by the way, and forced me into this collectivist culture, which I had nothing to do with. Like I have nothing. I do not like these people. I do not like the culture of the military, right? So they fucking tried to enslave me and put me through that. And when I realized I didn't want to conform to their cultural norms, they tried even harder to enslave me. Okay? So that's the downside of this system, is that there's this collective bullying. So it's not exclusive bullying like you see with girls in high school. What girls in high school will do is that if there's a girl they don't like, the group will exclude them and try and get rid of them. What I've experienced with army people and defense people is the opposite. What they'll do is that they'll bully you to try and make you like them. right? It's a feature of collectivists, of this, not necessarily collectivist culture, but the military. I think it comes back to how people are trained originally. The idea is that the person next to you owes something to you because you're going to war together potentially. And note that I am in the same boat as these institutions. Not the people. A lot of the people in these institutions are fuckwits, but the actual mission of these institutions I'm on board with, I just don't want anything to do with their cultures, because they're like, I'm a little bit prejudiced against the military. I think a lot of this culture makes people act like absolute fucking morons. Getting back to my rant, yeah, there's this inclusive bullying. So they made some fucking porn. I was able to use that in a PR campaign and do a massive social engineering project, and they feel like I somehow owe something to them, where they were making this porn for me to try and recruit me as they had already enslaved me, right? So fuck you. Like, I don't owe you shit. And they'd been sending memes amongst each other, and they'd had these, and people at Michael's gym had these connections to these big people overseas. Like, you know, I've said their names before. They're not even them lovely people. And then it's like, oh, Michael's like, you stole my work because I had these relationships with these people, and there was this communication meme chain, and you stole the meme. And it's like, no, this is about relationships. What Michael did is that he fucked up his relationship with me, right? Because he's got this collectivist authoritarian attitude. And then he's surprised that I don't want anything to fucking do with him, and I've had to spend the last 2 years trying to unenslave myself from him. I was enslaved the moment I came to Canberra, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't realize I had joined a cult, and I didn't realize that cult was how deeply it was associated with the cyber warfare and cyber security community. And I didn't quite understand the attitudes of the people I was around. I didn't realize that I was genuinely part of a militia. And that's something I wanted to say, but I want to finish this video today talking about the aspects of the military which I really appreciate. I can do so many things that other people in my family can't do, to the point that many of the people, at least in my nuclear family, can no longer relate to me. Like, I described myself as a Sam Harris who could overthrow a government through a CIA black op. Yeah, no, I fucking could. I definitely fucking could do that. And to an extent, I've done it. But anyway, getting back to the stories, like, I had these amazing mentors at the Naval College. Amazing mentors. And there's a man I call Raf. If I have to deal with anyone who has a policing background ever again, he's probably the guy. He was I don't want to say too much, but he was a spook. And that's when I first had any contact with intelligence stuff, and he did all kinds of different jobs. And he was just the most grounded guy. There was this gentleman called Commander Hines, and he was an absolute gentleman. He saw me suffering because I'd been bastardized, and he kind of took me under his wing a bit. I used to have like a weekly or daily meeting with him, and his background was that he was in small boats, and I think if I ever had to do Navy, that's probably where I'd go. I'd probably go into patrol boats, probably seamanship, and that or int stuff. I'm not going to do it though, because if I'm honest, I've had enough to do with military cultures to last me 3 lifetimes at this point. But something that small boats guys do is that they have this emphasis on taking care of their crew. They're very personable people. There's a very different attitude amongst the different branches of Navy. The people who are involved in the surface warfare ships, they're often really grumpy people. The people who are on fat ships, so these are your supply ships and your refueling vessels, they're often a little bit more chill. they have to often do the most dangerous work, because the most dangerous thing that people do in the Navy on a frequent basis is what's called a replenishment at sea, where they begin throwing lines across and they get these hoses and lines. It's all quite hectic and dangerous. But they're also a bit more chill. Submariners are the most professional. I have a lot of respect for the submariners. They're very intense and they're very Johnny on the spot, and they're probably our most important capability. I had a decent divisional officer called Lieutenant Hanson. I think he's a 2.5 now. Power to him. I also had a Lieutenant Commander Hudson. He was pretty cool. And there was this guy called Lieutenant Whitehead, and he was the most old, such a wise guy. And often I find that people conflate years and age with wisdom, but he's the person who was able to get his value from his years, and he was pretty cool as well. Now, I wanted to give a shout out to my mentors, because, again, I can do amazing things now. I can take charge, I can lead, I can lead political movements. I can do all these things because of my military training, and I'm very grateful for it. All right, have a lovely day, everyone.